It's the 6th of June. I don't think I did anything last month. I did a lot, but I definitely didn't vlog at all last month. I'm pretty sure of that. I did try a couple of times. I think I was sort of thinking, oh, I'll have a good hair day and a good light day. And then it wasn't. It was not, if it was one, it wasn't the other kind of thing. Anyway, never mind. It's not going to happen. At the moment, that's how it is. I accept it. But I want to push on, and I really want to do this today. I may have to pause every now and then because there's a guy out there with a chainsaw doing some gardening work, and it's a bit irritating, I guess, to have that, in the background. I have been busy, kind of getting back to work. Things look very, very almost back to normal out there in the big wide world. See a lot more traffic and a lot more people just going around doing whatever they have to do. So it doesn't really feel like lockdown, although I'm so out of touch now with what we're actually meant to be doing, and it's also sort of confusing. So I think we just carry on as we more or less have done since the middle of March. So yeah, homebound mostly, and only going out for absolutely essential outings. The world is definitely watching the USA at the moment. There is a hell of a lot going on there. I will come back to that later in, sort of in a way related to some of the things that I want to talk about. I actually Googled, so I was thinking about, it's very strange. And I'll be really honest, I've only visited the USA once, and I went to the West Coast, I went to LA, and then I went up to Las Vegas, and it was all very strange, and I didn't particularly fall in love with it or anything. And I remember flying back to London from LA, and I did kind of think, if I never came back to the US again, I don't think, although there's so many things, especially I would say it's, the music. And talking about music, I was just thinking, let's say you're a real, far right, kind of hardened white supremacist. And there's a few of them, let's face it. We've seen them, they've all come out of the shadows in the last few years. And I was wondering, is there do they know sort of like what music they absolutely should not listen to? Do they have some kind of a labeling system or something? So I thought, I'm just going to ask Google. So I asked Google, I typed in, what music are white supremacists not allowed to listen to? And they didn't really have an answer. All that came up was, just about all the bands that play their anthems and, their kind of music. So obviously it's not going to be anything I'm ever going to want to listen to. But I thought that was really interesting. I also Googled I Googled who, well, this is sort of sad in a way. I Googled who is the best YouTube vlogger with less than 10 subscribers. And the answer that came back, well, it was all about, everything was how to become the most successful, YouTuber in the world. So there wasn't, nothing came up. My question wasn't answered. It was just like, this is what you have to do if you want to become the biggest vlogger in the world, which thankfully I don't. But it was funny because at the bottom of that page, there was a little thing that said, Google has not been asked this question before, something like that. And then there was a link and they asked if you wouldn't mind kind of taking part in it, but I wasn't really that interested. But I will say that's never happened to me where, I've put in a question, even my question about the music question, that box didn't come up. And again, it didn't answer my question, but I thought it was quite interesting. Talking about American music, here's a song that I really think you all know, and if I dare say, if any of my kind of, in the future, if anyone is watching this, I dare say they'll probably know it too. And in the light of everything that's going on at the moment, sort of seems timely to talk about Bye Bye Miss American Pie. And I do believe it is considered to be like in the top 10 greatest songs of the last century, or most popular anyway. I mean, it was huge. It was released in 1971. It stayed at number one for I don't know how long, and it was number one worldwide, and it was like crazy off the charts, so popular. And I think years later, Madonna did a version of it, and then that went to number one as well. But listen, I think you all know it. The Day the Music Died. And roughly, it was about the death of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and hang on, I am going to have to refer to this wonderful article I found. It's a website called American Songwriter, and the author is, he's actually a musician and journalist himself. His name is Paul Zollo, and the article it's called Behind the Song American Pie by Don McLean. And actually this was released, this article, on May the 6th. So it's only a month old. It's been out there for a month. Anyway, on February the 3rd, 1959, Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. Richardson, those three guys, they died in a plane crash. And Bob Dylan, he's always been very passionate about particularly Buddy Holly. And when he was a young guy, before he became famous, he went to see Buddy Holly live. And his account of it is that he was kind of quite near the front of the stage, and at one point Buddy Holly looked absolutely directly at him, and he sort of felt this amazing energy, and then a few days later this plane crash happened. Um, and then a few years later, Don McLean wrote and released Bye Bye Miss American Pie. And it's, the lyrics are, you know, like they almost have to be decoded. And again, I mean, he's famously been reluctant to explain it's what it means to the listener. And actually, he famously said, when he was asked, I'm going to read from this article. Since it first emerged, people have been hungry to understand each line, and Don was forever besieged with questions about its meaning. He was resistant wisely in cracking its codes, and instead offered this coy response about its meaning. It means I don't ever have to work again if I don't want to. Dignified silence, he said, was the best answer, preferring to leave listeners on their own to decipher his words. So Zollo interviewed Don McLean, and the article is quite long, but I would like to just read Don McLean's words, just that part of the article. I was trying to create a dream, so there were lines in there that were dreamlike, almost in order to connect other concepts that I had that were semi-real. But it was a dream, and the idea came from the idea that politics and music flow parallel to one another. I wanted to write a song that summed up everything I felt about America and music, and I did it, and it turned out beyond my wildest dreams. It didn't take a long time to write. The body of the rock song was written pretty quickly once I got the gist of where I was going. The first part, the opening part and the chorus, I had for a few months. I couldn't quite figure out where to go with it. Then I decided to speed it up and change it, so I found a way to do it. The Buddy Holly plane crash is the start of it, but then it moves into a whole other realm. It was a well-written song, and I felt it was a really good idea. But when I first played it, people yawned. They didn't know what I was talking about. It was way too long. It was just verse, chorus, but we broke that up by having a slow beginning and a slow end. Ed Freeman, who produced the record, deserved a lot of credit for making a record out of it that was very, very special and which was commercial. I also deserve a lot of credit because I made the band play it until it was right. I had to fight on so many things with people who are my allies. Ed Freeman and I damn near killed each other a few times over some of this stuff. I said, this is not right. Finally, we got a guy named Paul Griffin, a black piano player. He came in and he just jumped all over that song. He understood exactly how to play that song, and he played the living hell out of it. And I drove that guitar right up his ass in his earphone, my acoustic, and that's what made him jump all over it. And that's how it happened. And then I said, now you're talking. Now we've got the track. Well, we can all safely listen to it, but there could be a few people out there, if they knew that bit of it, they might never be able to listen to that song again. I'm just saying. the other funny thing about, um, you know, the song, some people, I don't know, maybe it was Don McLean himself, alluded because, there's the line about the jester stole his corny crown. And according to Paul Zollo, at one point, Don McLean seemed to indicate that the jester wearing a borrowed coat from James Dean was meant to be Dylan, who didn't love this suggestion at all. A jester? He asked in 2017. Sure, the jester writes songs like Masters of War, Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall. Some jester. I have to think he's talking about somebody else. Then Dylan added, ask him. Good advice. Generally, if Bob Dylan offers advice on any subject related to songwriting, it makes sense to take it to heart. So, it definitely followed sort of my stream of consciousness, that led me to, I mean, I've loved this song for years. I remember I remember listening to it as a child. I mean, it was released in 1971, and I'm pretty sure I knew all the lyrics when I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old, and it's a long song. So it's been in there for a hell of a long time, but this was the first time I'd taken a real close look at it, and I thought that was so interesting, and just thought that was something nice to share with you guys. So the other thing I've become kind of particularly interested in is this idea of a basic human income. A lot of, if you think about what's happened in a way during this pandemic and how governments have done, taken really big measures, because absolutely they have to. I mean, they absolutely have to. And I'm thinking, well, surely there is an opportunity now to introduce some, I mean, they might seem radical, but to me it's not radical at all. I think it's really something we as a society should consider. And I found this interesting. Now there isn't a name because it's a sort of a website thing. They're called Sustainable Human, and they put out some pretty good sort of short, easy to understand documentaries about capitalism and about the direction we're all going in. And they did one recently, and one of the things that was proposed is, so let's take a company like Google, okay? And I've just said, I mean, we all spend a lot of time on Google, and every time we go into Google, Google makes money. And companies, these kind of new, especially online platforms, those kinds of businesses that just seem to be growing and growing and growing. I mean, at some point, like their very existence, and I know you can say that about every business, is all the people. And so what they were arguing, which I thought was so interesting, was that actually these, the idea of this capitalism and endless, never-ending growth, it's clearly failed. And the reason for that is because the disparity between the rich and the poor it's just got ridiculous now. So it's advocating that these companies have to become semi-public. So they're actually suggesting that, to start with, they have to share 10% of their profits with just with the public. And once you've taken that first step, then you can keep going and maybe all the way up to 100%. But it doesn't, I mean, don't think that I'm not, and I couldn't go to that point, but I do understand that if you just, that it is possible. The time, I think there is an opportunity now to do some quite radical things that they're actually not radical. They're actually just very human and necessary, and a solution to the situation that we're in. And as I watch what's going on right now in the USA in the aftermath of George Floyd's, witnessing his death, it's, and then the subsequent, reaction, which is actually really encouraging, because pushing back against the far right is just, to me, that is the most important thing right now. Because the way I see it, none of us really should be surprised that someone like Donald Trump ended up becoming the president of the USA, because this underbelly of far right white supremacism, it's been there for a while. They just got pushed back into the shadows. They never go away. Now they've all come out of the shadows, come up, they've got power, but they actually still are in the minority, and we need to push against them, because it never ever ends well. When they grab power. So I was watching, I've been watching a lot of, of course the protests are going on everywhere, and that's so encouraging as well, that so many people all over the world are speaking out and are showing, their anger and frustration, and I'm pleased about that, I will say. But then when you look at, now that the sort of microscope is really on the USA, and you look at what's going on, and then the disparity, and then these corporations, I really do think we need this radical change, and I do think that's a great idea. The Googles and Facebooks, and they can't continue this never-ending growth and profit. It's just ridiculous. And however it's done, by tax or just whatever way they come up with, I think that sharing of the profits sounds like a pretty damn good idea to me. And as an ode to George Floyd, an ode to Black Lives Matter, an ode to Antifa, which is anti-fascist, that's me, I found this lovely poem. He's an American poet of the last century, 1902 he was born, he died in 1967, and his name is Langston Hughes. And The poem is called I Too. I too sing, America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Over and out and thank you.